What's up, everybody? This is John with John Fair Innovations, bringing you more League of Legends Worlds 2021 content. I haven't been able to post for the last couple of days because of a few issues with computer, but all good now, ready to go. And what a time to start talking about League of Legends again. Had an amazing tournament so far. We're seeing a lot of dominance by the LPL and the LCK. The West falling a little bit behind, and also seeing some really positive things from PSG. Now, of course, we've moved from the one game per day format to the completion of a single group. So each team in that one group will be playing 3 games to finish out the group, assuming there are no tiebreakers. So the first group we're going to be having is, of course, the Group A that has Damwon Gaming, FPX, Rogue, and C9. As the group stands at the moment, Damwon is on 3-0, FPX is on 2-1, Rogue is on 1-2, and C9 is 0-3. Now, I want to talk a little bit about each team and a bit about how I see the group going for today. So firstly, we can start, of course, with Damwon. A lot of positivities from them. The players to watch I've got here should be no surprise to anyone. We've got Showmaker at 1, Canyon at 2, and Khan at 3. Damwon play very much for the top side of their team. Khan, Showmaker, and Canyon are absolutely insane players, and they are some of the strongest players at their position. Canyon, best jungler in the world in my opinion. Showmaker, arguably the best player in the world right now. And Khan, you would say, is probably the second best top laner in the world. So a lot of strength on that side of the map. So of course Damwon drafts and plays for that. And they've been doing that quite well. Khan has been dominating his lane. He won both sides of the matchup between Graves versus Jax. So, we're still a lot to learn about that matchup because, as I said, Khan dominated both sides of that matchup. When we have to talk about Damwon, the concern obviously comes from the bot lane, but I think the bot lane has been serviceable. I don't necessarily think they've been playing out of their mind, but I don't think they've been playing bad either. And in the end, when you have that much strength on the other side of your map, you don't need them to necessarily carry. You don't need them to be a Gala or a Ruler, or a Viper. You just need them to be able to go even or go slightly with a deficit, but lose the lane gracefully. And the amount of advantages that you're getting on the other side of the map usually makes it virtually impossible for the other team to come back. As it stands, we've seen the Damwon bot lane either go even or get slightly ahead. And when that happens, you see how dominant Damwon becomes because they're not playing with any real issues. If Ghost is a few CS behind, if he's a couple of hundred gold behind, this is something that's very, very easy because if he's a couple of hundred gold behind, you know that Showmaker, Canyon, and Khan are way, way more ahead, and they're getting objective control, they're getting turret plates. So yeah, was good to see them going towards the Jhin. He looked very comfortable on it. I believe it was Doublelift was talking about how he was having a chat with Ghost, and Ghost said that he likes picking Jhin in matchups that where he's not 100% sure. It's just a really big comfort pit. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines of when it's a matchup he's not sure about, he just simply picks the Jhin. A lot of teams seem to be drafting for dive and pick comps against Damwon, and they really seem to be focusing heavily on trying to punish bot lane. And this kind of seems like a little bit of a trap at the moment because the amount of resources people are spending to get a slight gold lead in the bot lane seems to be not worth it when how much you're giving up towards these 3 great players. And Ghost and Beryl, I think, are doing a very good job at absorbing a lot of pressure, allowing these great playmakers in Showmaker, Canyon, and Khan to really pop off and have great games. Damwon, I think, looks probably the strongest team. You could make an argument for EDG being the strongest team. I actually personally think EDG has been stronger, in my opinion. People are a little bit down on EDG because of their game against DFM, but I think DFM kind of surprised them a little bit. But yeah, to me personally, I think EDG has been the strongest, but definitely Damwon is at worst the second strong, shown to be the second strongest team at the tournament so far. I expect a lot of similar drafts for Damwon. I expect a lot of safety and a lot of comfort for Ghost, and really prioritizing getting a good counter pick for Khan, because getting him a favorable matchup in lane has been really doing well for them. Canyon seems like teams are trying to ban him out a little bit in draft, but out of all the junglers, Canyon has the strongest and deepest champion pool. We saw him actually play mid lane during the LCK. When they were boot camping last time in Europe with MSI, we saw Canyon in his solo queue, in like very high elo solo queue, popping off on things like Jace. So there's not really a champion in the game that Canyon can't play to an exceptional level. So I think it's not necessarily the best strategy to be trying to ban out Canyon, because we know Canyon's going to have some sort of pick. He just seems to have so many picks he can use. I expect Damwon to go either 5-1, 6-0, depending on the day. I do expect them to get out first in the group. They do seem to be a cut above everyone else, which is very impressive given the quality in this group. Next, we have, of course, FPX. FPX started off very slow. I think their meta read wasn't that great when they first came onto the Rift in this tournament, and I think that's why we saw them get really punished and really stomped by Damwon. Damwon seemed to come out really with a great sort of understanding of the meta, as opposed to FPX, which was still just going all in on this dive comp. It felt like the Jarvan Galio dive comp seemed to be another sort of try and bully Damwon's bot lane trap, which I think fed right into what Damwon wanted to do. Of course, the FPX have been slowly getting some momentum. They've been slowly getting better and better. Of course, they've shown a lot of vulnerability, and teams like Rogue and C9 will look at FPX and think that they can possibly take a game off them, especially in a best of one format. So I don't expect FPX to have the cleanest day. However, I do think this is not a representation of FPX, even though I do think FPX is the second best team in this group, and I think teams like Damwon and EDG are a cut above them. I just know for a fact that FPX is not a team that does very well in best of ones. We even saw the tournament where they won Worlds. They had a really, really difficult group stage. They're not a team that enjoys best of ones, and they're not a team that really enjoys the group stage. They seem to really ramp up as the tournament or as the season goes on. We even saw this in the LPL, where it was EDG that went undefeated at the beginning of the split, and then FPX eventually was able to, become the stronger team and become, the team that went to playoffs and the final first. But it takes FPX a little bit of time, more so than, say, a Damwon or an EDG, to get what the meta is and be able to apply it in games. Obviously, Doinby and Nuguri are the two biggest factors, I think, for FPX. I think their pure skill is sometimes just enough for FPX to win games that maybe they shouldn't win, or games they shouldn't be competitive in. I just think the quality of both these players helps FPX a lot, and kind of covers a lot of the problems that FPX seems to have. I also think that best of threes and best of fives is a better format for Doinby, because Doinby, we know, super carry, dark technology, all that sort of stuff. You can really utilize it a lot more in a best of five, I feel, than, say, in a best of one. Best of one, you kind of, you kind of have to be a little bit more stable. That's why teams like Gen G usually do well in best of ones, because they have a very predictable, tried and true strategy that's very safe. It's very easy to execute, and that's why I usually see a team like Gen G doing better than a team like FPX, because FPX, with someone like Doinby, may draft a little bit more volatile. But in a best of 5, if you know that the team you're playing against plays, a lot of Rise, for example, Doinby can have these crazy picks ready for that Rise pick. And I think that's where FPX has a lot of strength, and that's where you can really utilize and get leverage off Doinby's crazy champion pool. Crisp, I think, is very important for this team. He hasn't had the best tournament so far, but Crisp is really, really integral for this team. He is a big playmaker for them. We know how great his Thresh is, for example. And if FPX are going to take a game off Damwon, are going to get out of this group, we need to see more from Crisp, because it seems like sometimes Crisp is playing out of his mind and sometimes he is just running it down. So need to see more from Chris. I do believe that Chris will have a good day. However, I do expect at the end of it for FPX to come second. Now, whether that is based on the fact that Damwon just goes 3-0 and FPX goes 2-1, or whether it goes to a tiebreaker and Damwon wins that tiebreaker, I'm not sure. But I feel like it's going to be a pretty strong day for Damwon and FPX. But I do expect Damwon to get ahead of FPX. Next we have, of course, Rogue. Rogue, they've in many ways they've overperformed what we expected, but at the same time they have also underperformed. I think it's a bit harsh to judge Rogue too harshly, if that makes sense, because it's a very tough group. It's a very, very tough group. Many people see C9 as the best team out of NA. Obviously, many people see FPX being the best team out of the LPL. And of course, many people see Damwon as the best team in the world, full stop. So it's a very, very tough group for Rogue. Also, stylistically, especially when it comes to FPX and Damwon, I don't think Rogue match up very well. So it's, a very, very tricky group for them. I think if Rogue could have done better in playoffs and gotten the second seed, and we saw them in the group with RNG, Harmer Life, and PSG, we could have seen a lot more from Rogue, and I actually think Rogue has a really strong chance of getting out of that group. However, in this group, it's a really, really tough ask. Rogue, I did like the fact that, they identified in a normal game of League of Legends, in a typical meta sort of draft against FPX and Damwon, they're not going to win. So they tried to do a few little spicy things to try and get some sort of advantage, maybe throw something at these teams that they might not have been seen or well practiced against that they could take advantage of. We, of course, saw the Rumble top. That didn't work out too well. And we also saw the Fiddlesticks, which, while it was really punished early by Canyon's Talon, the Fiddlesticks, Inspired is a really great Fiddlesticks player on solo queue. And it made some plays, and it got Rogue at a point where you felt like they could possibly come back in that game against Damwon, but they'd given up such a deficit before that. It was just too much for them to overcome. But it was good to see from Rogue these moments. It was good for them to see this type of gameplay, that they aren't going to just, go down quietly, that they've got some tricks up their sleeve. I felt like last year they didn't really have much depth to their drafting or their champion pools, and they were really, really punished by Damwon and JDG. For example, Damwon knew that Finn was going to go with a Gangplank because, he really didn't have much else he could go with, and they were able to punish that with the Lulu. I don't think you have the same sort of predictability in their drafts this year, which was good to see. And I think that's why they've been able to have better performances this year as opposed to last year. Obviously, if we're talking about players to watch with Rogue, first and foremost, Hans Sama. I think Hans Sama has been the best ADC in this group by far. If I was to rate them, I would say it would be Hans Sama, Ghost, LWX, and then Sven as number 4. That's how I would rate them. But certainly Hans Sama has been playing absolutely out of his mind. Almost feels like he's, in Elo hell a little bit. He seems to be playing a cut above the rest of Rogue. He kind of brought them back against the Damwon game purely on his great play and his ability to 1v1 Ghost. But yeah, I don't know if Hans Sama's gameplay, like as great as he's been playing, I don't know if his gameplay and this meta in particular for an ADC is going to be enough for him to be able to hard carry it. Maybe in metas in past. It's actually funny that we talk about like Damwon and FPX and ADC metas, because we all remember the old school Ardent Sensor meta, which was dominated by the LCK and the LPL, where they would just, draft, what was called the Uzi comp, where you would literally have 3 tanks and you'd have a Enchanter support for that Ardent Sensor buff on your hyper carry ADC. And yeah, it's funny because I actually think that meta would suit Rogue better than it would suit FPX and Damwon. So yeah, it's really interesting how they kind of flipped a bit, because I actually think in that meta, Rogue gets out of this group first. But, we're in a meta now that is very much more heavily towards your jungle, your mid, and also your top lane, which means it's going to be really a lot more trickier. Trimby, I think, has been playing really great, but you could argue, though, is Trimby playing great because he's that good, or because he's with Hans Sama, who is the best ADC in the group? That's remained to be seen, but you've got to give them... The bot lane for Rogue has certainly been the highlight for the West, really. You'd say that they've been the best performing players out of EU and NA, so really great job by those two. And of course, Inspired, he might not have had the greatest tournament so far. He had, as I said, he had some moments on the Fiddlesticks, but Inspired to me is still the best jungler in Europe, and certainly someone who, if Rogue is going to get out of this group, if they're going to take a game off FPX, they're really going to need him to step up. I do think Tien can be targeted. I don't think this meta really suits him. And so, Inspired is someone who can punish that. I don't think Inspired has the tools and the mechanics and the way Rogue plays. I don't think they play necessarily for him. So I don't expect him to be able to take those advantages against, say, Canyon. But against Tien, Tien doesn't really seem to want to play these assassins, seems to more want to play these Gordrenka bruisers. And, I can see Inspired being able to take some advantage against Tien in that sense. Lastly, we of course have C9. C9 have disappointed a lot of fans, but again, just like Rogue, this is a very, very tough group. As I said, we know the quality of Damwon, we know the quality of FPX. Rogue is the best of one team that Europe has. So this was always going to be an uphill battle for C9. And they've shown moments. They've actually shown moments where they've been quality. I think that's what's frustrated a lot of people, because they seem to get to points where you might think they could possibly win the game. But the problems that we saw in play-ins keep plaguing them. I did say this earlier. I said that C9 are winning, but they're winning off the back of their players just being better than the competition they're going against. But they were making a lot of sloppy errors that teams were, not strong enough to punish. And we saw DFM punish it. We saw Unicorns of Love punish it. And then they're bringing those same mistakes against teams like Rogue, FPX, and Damwon. And you're just not allowed to do that against these quality teams. They will punish you every time. So expected. It shouldn't be that much of a surprise that C9 is 0-3 because they haven't fixed up these errors. But as I said, C9 have had some bright spots. I think Fudge has been fairly good. If we just pretend like the game against Darmon didn't happen, then Fudge has had a pretty decent tournament so far. He played really great in play-ins. He did struggle against Khan, but I think his games against Rogue and FPX were perfectly fine. And I do think he's probably been the best performing member of C9 so far. Blabber, very inconsistent, but he has his moments where he does some really good plays, and then he has some other moments where he seems to just be still making the same problems we saw at MSI. Face checking, just coin flipping over things that don't need to be coin flipped. He's just, and maybe that's just who Blabber is as a player. Maybe this is something that he possibly doesn't get punished enough in the LCS, so then he brings it to the international scene, and against against teams like that have junglers like Canyon, Inspired, TN, like they're going to really punish that stuff. And of course, yes, he's underperformed. Yes, there is a big debate at the moment about whether he deserves the contract he's on right now. But Perkz is always going to be a player to watch on this team. He is the superstar of this team. Unfortunately, he hasn't played to that level, and that's why there is a lot of, question marks, a lot of flame towards him. I do think if C9 has any chance of, taking games out of any of these teams, let alone being able to make a miracle run and get out of this group, we're going to need to see, G2 mid lane Perkz. We're going to have to see that version of Perkz, because what we've seen out of Perkz so far is definitely not enough for C9. But again, he's had moments, he has had some good moments, but he's getting caught out too much. He just, again, a lot of these sloppy mistakes that, teams are really punishing. So for C9, you're looking for a lot of help. You have to basically go 3-0 on the day. And then you kind of need to really go 3-0 on the day and need Rogue to beat FPX in order to force it to tiebreakers or be able to get out. Very unlikely to happen. I see C9 going fourth. Rogue have a better chance of getting out, but whether they will is not to be seen. I don't think they will. But with Rogue, you're looking to go 3-0 or at least 2-1, but beat FPX. So you can take a loss to Darmon, but you need to beat FPX and C9. You need Darmon obviously to beat FPX, and it would really help. You would be able to get out of group straight away if C9 also beat FPX. But at least if you beat FPX and Darmon beats FPX and you win your game against C9, then at least you go 2-1 and you can force it to tiebreakers. So can happen, quite plausible, but I don't personally see that happening. For FPX, you really just have to beat Rogue because you would expect them to beat C9. If you take care of business against Rogue, pretty much at least guaranteed second. For FPX, they'll be looking to go 3-0 and force a tiebreaker against Darmon for that first spot. That's what they will be looking for. And of course, Darmon, if Darmon beats FPX in first game, they've already qualified for groups. Shows you the level of how strong they are and how well they've played so far. Is they really only need to beat FPX in order to make it to groups. But for Darmon, you're looking to get at least 2 wins today. You're really looking at that FPX game as a win. Winning that game and then beating C9 means that you make it out first. Or if you beat FPX and you beat Rogue, you make it out first. So that's what I think that's my thoughts on the group. As I said, I think Damwon comes out first, FPX second, Rogue third, and C9 fourth. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Rogue's going to be able to get out of the group? Do you think C9 can make the miracle run? Do you think Damwon's going to falter a bit? Or do you think they're going to go 6-0? Because that's obviously going to be a big question. There's only been one team ever that's gone 6-0 in a group and not won Worlds. And that was Kingzone. Were they called Longzhu? They were called Longzhu. Yeah, it was Longzhu back then. Longzhu. And of course, the top laner for that team was, of course, Khan. So, really, really interesting to see what happens there. Khan, obviously, final tournament of his professional career, and he's looking to win Worlds, and Damwon's very well poised at this stage. But let me know your thoughts. But always, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you next time.